Good morning, dear students, and welcome back to your literature class. In our earlier class, the first class, we read about Mr. Fogg and his journey till India, when he reached India. Today, children, we are going to read further. In our first class, we read that Mr. Fogg had reached a place where there was no railway line further, and they had to find a transport to go to Allahabad, from where they could get another train to reach Calcutta, which they had to reach within 2 days. Now they'll search everywhere. He and Sir Francis went around the whole village, and his valet Passepartout also went and looked for some means of transport, but they could not find anything. And finally, Mr. Fogg said that never mind, I will walk and reach to Allahabad. I will walk for 50 miles, but we will reach to Allahabad in any case. So today we will continue a lesson from there. Now, Passepartout looked down at his lovely slippers with a frown of dismay. Now see, this is a beautiful line. He looked down at his lovely slippers and frowned with a dismay. These are two opposite expressions. Beautiful slippers, if the slippers are actually beautiful, then you should be happy looking at them. But here, he was frowning with dismay. Dismay is an expression of sorrow. When you're not happy, when you're not satisfied, that implies that it is a sarcastic comment. That means his slippers were worn out. They were not up to the mark that he could walk till 15 miles. It was lucky that he had also been hunting for something, and hesitating a little, he said, "Sir, I think I have found something which might be suitable." He looked at his slippers, but then suddenly he remembered, because he was also going around in the village, but he was hesitant because he cannot intervene, or he cannot interfere into his master's decisions. But along with that hesitation, he simply said that, "Sir, I have something in mind which may be suitable for us, or which may be profitable for us, which they can take as an option." What? An elephant belonging to an Indian living 100 feet from here. He said, "What do you think? What is your option? What option have you seen?" Mr. Fogg asked. And he said, "I saw one man living 100 feet from here," means that was nearby, "and he owns an elephant." What he meant was that they could hire or buy that elephant to reach Allahabad. Mr. Fogg said, "Let us go and see the elephant," replied Mr. Fogg. 5 minutes later, Phileas Fogg, Sir Francis Cromarty, and Passepartout arrived at the hut where the Indian with the elephant lived. Mr. Fogg asked him if they could see the elephant. So he also agreed, and he said, the master, Mr. Fogg, said that okay, we can consider this option also. So all three of them, Sir Francis, Mr. Fogg, and Passepartout, they all went to that hut where that farmer was living with the elephant. They went there, and Mr. Fogg asked the farmer that if they all could see the elephant. The Indian took them outside to where the elephant was. It was a half-tamed animal, which his owner was training to be a fighting elephant, not an elephant to be used for carrying passengers. Now this farmer took them to the place where the elephant was. But that elephant was half tamed. What do you mean by tamed? Tamed means to train somebody or to domesticate some animal. But he was a half tamed animal. And above that, that farmer was training that elephant to be a fighter elephant and not something that would carry passengers. Kioni, the animal's name, could, like all elephants, go quite fast on a long trip. But because they could get nothing else, Phileas Fogg was determined to get him. Now, being on elephant, of course, will be faster means of transport rather than going on foot or maybe a bullock cart or something. That time only these things were available. A bullock cart was there. Nobody had cars except very wealthy people. A bullock cart or a horse ride or something like that. So, as compared to all those means, elephant would have been much faster. So, he was determined to get this elephant and reach Allahabad in time. But elephants are very expensive in India, where they are beginning to be rare. Even at that time, elephants were very rare in India because they were very few, and so they were very expensive. As only the males are fit for the circus, they are always needed, and the male elephants, they were used in circus. Earlier we used to have circus shows. I don't know whether you people have visited any circus in the city, but at times we have jumbo circus shows, which you should at least once go and visit. They are actually entertaining, and the skills shown there are amazing. You should once at least you should visit. Next, whenever it is possible, I don't know when, but whenever it is possible, you must ask your parents to take you there. You will really enjoy. And he says that the male elephants are used in circus. You must have watched that in TV shows or in old movies it is shown. So male elephants were used for circus. So they had to be trained that way, and that also decreased the number. Very few elephants are born out of jungle. So nearly all the tame elephants have to be caught by hunting. So there were very few elephants living out of the jungle. Most of them were in the jungle only, and they were caught specially to be tamed so that they could be used either in circus or for fighting or for personal use. And as it is, they were very rare, very few left. For this reason, the elephants are very carefully looked after. So when Mr. Fogg asked the Indian if he could use the elephant, the Indian refused. Now see, the elephants were rare commodity sort of a thing, like they were very, very rare animals. Like we have tigers now, they are very rare. And they were needed for many purposes. And when somebody catches an elephant, that is also a very huge task. It takes lots of efforts. So that Indian was quite proud of what he has done. He has an animal which is rare, and then he doesn't want to give it away just like that. So Mr. Fogg asked that could we have that animal to reach Allahabad. He simply refused. He said, no, I will not give. Mr. Fogg continued his request and offered a very high price for the animal, £10 an hour. Now, Mr. Fogg continued. Continuously he was after that farmer, give me the animal, I need it, I have to reach. And he was trying to persuade that man to ask him again, by asking him again and again. And he started bidding now. Bidding means offering money. He started giving his rates. And he started by £10 an hour. £10 means, in today's rate, I think it is around 100 something. For 10 means 1 pound is 100 something, so 10 means 1000 per hour. He started in that era. That time also it must have been very costly. £10 means a lot. That is a lot of money. You can buy so many things. It's not 10 rupees. There £10 have a lot of value. He refused. 20 pounds? Still refused. He said 10 pounds. The farmer refused. Then Mr. Fogg says, all right, 20 pounds. Farmer still refused. He was not ready. 40 pounds. Refused again. Paisa Pataud jumped every time the price went up. Now Paisa Pataud was sweating that what is his master up to? He's raised the rate every second, 10, 20, 40, and that farmer is not ready to give the elephant at any cost he is offering. And that poor Vele was in a bad shape. But the Indian would not accept. By this time, the price was huge. If the elephant was used for 15 hours, as they expected, the owner would get 600 pounds. He had given 40. He had given a bid of pounds per hour. But the farmer was not ready. And Paisa Pataud calculated that the animal was about to be used for almost 15 hours. Like from the place they were and they had to reach Allahabad, 50 miles, it would take them 15 hours to reach. And 15 into 40 means 600 pounds. He will earn for what? Just for letting them use the animal. And see, the farmer was not ready to give. Nothing could persuade the owner. Then Mr. Fogg offered to buy the elephant and offered the Indian 1,000 pounds. The Indian would not sell. Now he tried all his efforts and he wanted that elephant in any case and every case. But he was not selling only. He was not giving for rent. He just meant that he should drop them to Allahabad and come back and take 600 pounds. But this Indian man was not ready. So Mr. Fogg had no choice. He offered to buy the elephant. He said, okay, I will buy this elephant. And how much he offered? 1,000 pounds. But what happened? The farmer did not agree. He did not want to sell even at 1,000 pounds. Sir Francis pushed his hand on Mr. Fogg's arm and begged him to stop. Phileas Fogg replied that he was not in habit of doing anything without a good reason, and that a bet worth 20,000 pounds meant that this elephant was necessary to him, and that he was prepared to pay more than 20 times its value in order to get it. Now Sir Francis also started feeling that this is too much of money we are paying for the elephant. So he held Mr. Fogg's arm and told him to stop. Now don't increase the rate. But Mr. Fogg was determined to get it. And he wanted it at any cost. Why? Because of those 20,000 pounds. And he said that for those 20,000 pounds, he was ready to pay the cost 20 times more. He said, I will pay 20 times more the value of the elephant, but this elephant is very necessary for me to reach Allahabad in time so that he can get the train in time and they can reach Calcutta in time. So he was quite sure that he needs it. He was determined. He has fixed his mind and he was ready to buy it at any cost. Mr. Fogg turned back to the Indian. He could see that if the price were right, the Indian would agree. Now, you know, the face of the person, you can judge that he is ready to sell or not. The man heard 1,000 rupees, so his face started changing. And that Mr. Fogg could read. And he could assess that if he increases a bit, that man will sell the animal. He offered the Indian 1,200, 1,500, 1,800 and finally 2,000 pounds. Paise Pataud, whose cheeks were usually so rosy, was pale and worried. 2,000 pounds, the Indian agreed. Now Mr. Fogg read his mind and he said that yes, this man will sell me the animal if only I give him more money. So he started increasing. He started with 1,000, then raised to 1,200, then raised to 1,500 and raised to 1,800 and finally 2,000 pounds for that animal. And at 2,000 pounds, that farmer agreed to sell the elephant. And what happened to the poor valet, Paise Pataud? He was totally pale and worried that so much money my master is spending on this animal. He was very worried and he was taken aback. Such a big amount of money going away just for 50 miles. He could not accept. Finally, they could find a vehicle for themselves to reach the place, to reach Allahabad. Now what did they need next? Now all that was needed was to find a guide. Now they were new to the place. They did not know anything about India. They had reached and they were thinking that they will straight away reach to a station. From there they will change the train and reach Calcutta. But this did not happen. So they did not know how to reach Allahabad. So they planned to hire one guide which would lead them to Allahabad. That was a lot easier than obtaining the elephant. And that easily they could find a man who could guide them, which was of course much easier than buying that elephant. A young Indian with an interesting, clever face offered to guide them. Mr. Fogg accepted him and offered him a large reward if he were really good. An Indian was passing and he must be observing that they are trying to buy the elephant. So he offered himself that okay, I will take you to Allahabad and I will guide you the way. So Mr. Fogg agreed and he said, alright, you guide us, and he offered him that he will give you good money if you were good and you will reach, actually help them reach there in time or faster. So he will give a good amount of money to him. Reward means a good amount of money. The elephant was brought out and made ready for his journey. Then they started preparing the elephant. You have to put some saddle or some place, some seats and all, so that people can sit, and the elephant has to be eaten, he has to eat, has to be fed, he has to eat, drink and be prepared for the journey. His new driver covered him with a sort of saddle cloth. So a saddle cloth was put on him and put on each side of his back two kinds of rather uncomfortable seats. The seats were not comfortable, but two seats were put on his back so that they could sit there. Mr. Fogg paid the Indian in banknotes taken from his bag. Then Mr. Fogg asked Sir Francis if he would like to go with them to Allahabad. The general said that he would. Now Mr. Fogg asked Sir Francis that would you like to travel with us to Allahabad on this elephant? And Sir Francis agreed. Then he said yes, he wants to go. One more passenger was not enough to tire this enormous animal. Enormous means huge, big. Enormous actually means in big quantity, but here it is used for the animals, means huge, a big animal. All the necessary food was bought. All the necessary food was bought means that everything they needed on the journey, everything was bought from that village. Sir Francis sat on one side of the elephant's back and Mr. Fogg sat on the other. Paise Pataud sat across the animal's back between them. Now, there were two seats were there, so one side Mr. Fogg sat, the other side Sir Francis sat. And Paise Pataud sat in between them at the back of the animal. The driver sat on the elephant's neck. Now you can see in this picture, it is given here how they were sitting. A cloth is there and two kinds of seats are there. See, at the back, Passepartout is sitting, Mr. Fogg is sitting this side, and Sir Francis sitting that side, and the driver is sitting on the neck of the elephant. They left the end of railway line at 9 o'clock and entered the thick forest that was all around. So, they began their next journey at 9 o'clock. See, in the beginning we saw that the train had arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they started their next journey at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that 1 hour it took them to know about what was happening, then to buy the elephant, then to get settled, buy all the food items, and start their next journey by this animal elephant and to Allahabad. So 1 hour it took them for all the preparation and to start their next journey to Allahabad. Then what happened with them, and did they reach Allahabad, or could they reach Calcutta in time, and further could they reach, and how they reached London? Was it in time or not? For all that, you will have to read this novel, Around the World in 80 Days. The novel is actually very adventurous. It takes you to many places, gives you the idea about the culture of those places, and what actually happens in the end. You want me to tell? Or I think you should read the novel. We'll discuss in the next class. So have a nice time, enjoy, and try to read the novel and enjoy it too. Have a great day.